Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, August 2nd, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Emily Guendelsberger, author of On the Clock, What Low-Wage Work Did to Me and How It Drives America Insane. Also on the program today, Trump taking heat over those 2,000 Facebook ads citing an invasion at our border. Meanwhile, a Trump superfan given 20 years for sending bombs to prominent Democrats. Forgot about that one.
I didn't.
That's indeed. As the top USDA physiologist quits over climate science suppression by the Trump administration, the USDA Inspector General says the office relocation scheme is illegal. Post-debate polling is out. Warren won the battle. Not quite the war. U.S. expands to a full embargo of Venezuela. This is the first embargo in the Western Hemisphere in 30 years. And with China, trade war escalates. Treasury designates the China a currency manipulator. And the Trump National Labor Relations Board may rule that Scabby the Rat is illegal. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Gerald Nadler predicts an impeachment decision by the Judiciary Committee by late fall. And people beginning to fear mass oppression in Kashmir following the quashing of part of the Indian constitution that gave Kashmir autonomy by Prime Minister Modi. All this and more on today's program. I don't want to freak people out, but one of the things that I distinctly remember when Donald Trump became president was that we're about to find the answer to the question of just like how long would it take for things to see the impact of having a completely incompetent president, to see that impact on the world stage. And, counterfactuals are very, very difficult. It's possible under anybody's presidency that we would see this type of very scary escalation on the horizon with India and Pakistan over Kashmir. Or that we could be on the horizon, we see on the horizon the potential for China to unleash its army in Hong Kong, which could happen at any time. Turkey invading Syria at any time. North Korea beginning to ramp up their missile program again. All of these things have happened at various times over the years. Maybe not so much the Turkey invasion, but more or less. But the idea that all of these potential fairly major crises, Pakistan and India probably being one of the most dangerous, is a little scary. Iran, of course, also continuing to board ships or we had South Korea firing missiles at, the military firing at Russian planes. There's a lot of different things going on in the world that could end up being super problematic in the next 4 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard to know whether the absence of a functioning U.S. State Department has anything to do with that.
Well, I think also the fact that, again, though, they are ideologically synchronized, right? Like Trump, Modi, Bolsonaro are definitely part of the same global trend. And, obviously more competence, maybe I don't think there's any particular investment that Trump has. In fact, he would like to have a deal in Kashmir, even though obviously he knows nothing about it for his own aggrandizement. But in general, governments are coming to power that are making commitments doing these sort of things, and they're doing it. Right.
I mean, and maybe they're encouraged on some level by the fact that Trump is, if he understood what was going on, would be like, yeah, it sounds like something I'd do. But also it could just be like there's no countervailing forces to go in and say, hey, let's chill out a little bit here. We're going to just sell arms to everybody involved in this conflict and everybody will feel better or something like that. So I don't know. I mean, it just, it's of the myriad of things to freak you out this week. Add those to it. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show. As a reminder, you can get the fun half, which supposedly will let a little air out of the tires, hopefully, more often than not.
That's what they say.
Not necessarily, but a little air out of the tires so that by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. And speaking of which, the right has been on a real tear as of late because of the minimum wage. Like I say, the best thing about that is that they are promoting the fact that the Democrats actually voted to raise the minimum wage $15 an hour. I think Nancy Pelosi couldn't have hoped for more. They passed 60 bills. None of them got any attention except for the rising of the minimum wage. And why is that? Because one, the idea that that labor would in any way be empowered. And I did a fascinating interview on what happened with the car industry in the United States. We're going to run that during vacation at the end of the month, but it's fascinating. The obsession with getting the cheapest labor costs possible is stunning. And of course, the dynamic really to look at, right? I mean, a dollar figure is just a dollar figure. It doesn't mean anything without a sense of how much this thing costs and how much productivity is there. Productivity is basically how much money is being generated by a company. And then you start thinking about the share of labor in that productivity. How much of profits essentially are going to, or revenue is going to labor relative to the productivity and to the overall share of revenue. And we know that even at $15 a minimum wage, workers are still getting less of a share of productivity or relative to productivity than they were 40 years ago. But yet they're very concerned because, the Wall Street Journal has a piece today about how 6 months later, people are really worried about the rise in the minimum wage. Now, there's no data. They just interview like 2 or 3 people who are like, yeah, I'm sort of worried. And then somebody from the Chamber of Commerce who's like, yeah, this is bad.
It's a lot of concerns.
A lot of concerns. You don't see people at Fox News talking about rental real estate prices in New York that are driving businesses out. It's always labor costs are too much. Here is Stuart Varney, again, on Fox and Friends. And it's always great to see the Fox and Friends people feel this is personal. When they feel these tragedies. Here is Ainsley Earhart talking about her friend again.
One of my best friends lives down in Florida. She has a chicken salad restaurant. They sell chicken salad. I asked her, could you survive if you increase it to $15 an hour? She said, absolutely not. It would take us under. She said, granted, the employees I have that work really hard, that do a wonderful job, they do get paid a little bit more, and she gives pay raises. But you got to earn that.
Don't let politicians set wage levels.
Okay, pause it for a second. Wait a second. So I'm unclear what Ainsley is saying at the end here. They actually get paid the minimum wage?
Oh, not 15, Sam. They might get like 14.25 if they're a really hard worker.
But you got to earn it.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? Like, here's the thing.
Opportunity.
Well, what does it mean?
Salad sandwich place.
What percentage of your productivity do you deserve? Right? Like, you never hear this that concept even come up in these situations because it is completely random.
It's basically charity.
In a chicken salad sandwich shop, my understanding is that you could actually, I'm trying to pretend like that's not hilarious.
Where do you hear the names of the sandwiches?
The chicken salad sandwich shop, you could assess how many sandwiches are my employees making per hour and what is my profit on that or what is my revenue on it. And I can find out how much of that revenue is dedicated to labor. That delta between your revenue and what you pay labor is whatever you as a chicken salad sandwich shop owner deem it should be. And now, I imagine, do you think she has a tiny shop or do you think that she has 100 affiliates across the country?
I guess there's somewhere around 100 franchises.
100 franchises?
Chicken salad shops across the globe. So.
First of all, the idea that a chicken salad restaurant.
It's everywhere.
Only chicken salad.
What more could you ask for?
It's in every Mayo state in the union.
I'm sorry, maybe your business is not meant to survive. Like
now all of a sudden you're Varney here. Maybe you aren't supposed to stay in the marketplace.
Well, I mean, my bottom line is, and I felt this as a waiter, but my feeling was like, if you're going out to eat and you can't afford to leave at least 15% tip, then you just got to find a less expensive restaurant. That's basically like my feeling. Like that's part of
the Shark Tank.
Exactly. That's part of the cost of going out there. And part of the cost of doing business is you pay your employees. And well, let's hear where Varney's going with this.
One of my best friends lives down in Florida. She has a chicken salad restaurant. They sell chicken salad. I asked her, could you survive if you increase it to $15 an hour? She said, absolutely not. It would take us under. She said, granted, the employees I have that work really hard, that do a wonderful job, they do get paid a little bit more, and she gives pay raises. But you got to earn that.
She gives pay
Don't
raises.
let politicians set wage levels because they're buying votes. They're saying, hey, you vote for me, and look what you get. You will get a raise. You'll get $15 an hour.
Well, that sounds like a... Yeah, it's not like we didn't watch President Trump walk through the 21st Century Club. Is that what that's called? The 21 Club? To people eating like $500 dinners. Literally tapping I'm going to cut all your taxes. Give me a break.
And I can tell just by Ainsley Airhead's personality that her friend is the worst boss ever.
Who knows? Who knows?
If
the
you're
bottom
not
line,
committed to the mission of selling chicken salads, then you don't belong here. If it's just about the money and not the idea of putting the best chicken salad on a plate that can be put on a plate, then you should not be in this business.
But it's better than buying votes. This is buying votes with capitalists' money.
Yeah.
Even better.
Make them give
now,
it to the
we did a little research. We don't know if it's the same company. I want to be clear about this. However, Ainsley Earhart did visit and promote a chicken salad restaurant in the Glades, Florida. Is that what it's called?
The Villages.
The Villages. Well, I don't know where that is. Somewhere in the Florida.
It's in hell.
And it's a very hoity-toity place. And we just looked up that company. And this company, what is the chicken salad? Now, it may not be her.
It might not be her, but Chicken Salad Chick is at least the first one that comes up on Google.
There could be multiple chicken salad restaurants in Florida,
which might also be a problem,
that are also friendly with Ainsley Earhart.
I try to keep
once you get into that chicken salad,
I try to be friends with everybody in the chicken salad cartel.
But we just saw an article about that chicken salad chick, and they gave $100,000 to charity to deal with cancer. I think
cancer and hunger.
Cancer and hunger, and good for them. But I have another suggestion. That businesses are not responsible first for charity. They're first responsible for paying their workers. And so pay your workers. If that $100,000 doesn't cover it, which, boy, you got a lot of workers and you're paying them very little amount of money.
119 locations.
But if that $100,000 doesn't cover it, don't worry. I mean, you don't have anything left because we're going to tax those workers. We'll take some of that money, and then you promote cancer research by the government. And then think of how that money travels to getting to those that cancer research. It goes into your employees' pockets. Then they pay it out to someone else who's got another business. It goes in sales tax. It goes in wage taxes. Everybody gets paid. And then the money still ends up going to cancer research.
Sam, do you understand logic?
Oh my God. I'm just looking at the menu right now and it's like so much mayonnaise. It's making me a little bit nauseous.
A good place for that in Florida.
I feel like I'm on too much tuna right now. I'm being pranked.
Folks, the World Health Organization has named the health epidemic of the 21st century. Do you know what it is? Anybody?
Is it
stress, my
stress? Friend. Michael knows it. That's what they tell you as soon as you go into your silent retreat.
That's right.
We're feeling more uncertainty and anxiety than ever before. We're going to hear more about that with our guest today, actually. That's why we're partnering with Calm. It's the #1 rated app for meditation. When you meditate, your brain chemistry changes. Meditation's been shown to slow down the release of stress chemicals into your bloodstream, like cortisol and adrenaline, giving you much needed relief. With Calm, you discover a whole library of simple, guided meditations on themes like anxiety, creativity, and focus. They even have other resources to help you relax, like sleep stories, music, and more. So if you're stressed, take a deep breath and get Calm. Right now, Majority Report listeners get 25% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/majority. That's CALM.com/majority. 40 million people have downloaded Calm. Find out why at calm.com/majority. Also, we all want a haven, a place that feels uniquely you, right?
Of course, Sam.
With Joybird, you get one-of-a-kind furniture crafted to your unique taste. Now, we're lucky. We got a Joybird store right down the street here. Have you been to this one?
Yeah, the one in DeKalb.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And I love it. All the furniture I found incredibly comfortable. Yeah, I wanted to check it out to make sure that we weren't.
We
weren't
strolled
promoting.
through like
Yep.
gangsters, and they were like, "What are you doing here? Are you planning on
Don't
buying
worry.
anything?" And we're like, "Don't worry.
We're
just
gonna sit on
jump on the
everything."
couch just so we can be honest with our listeners."
But here's the thing that's amazing about Joybird. You have your ideas for your apartment. You can turn them into reality because they have hundreds of styles and options. They have rich buttery leather to the plushest velvet you've ever felt. You want a sofa in aquatic blue? No problem. A love seat in bubblegum pink? If you can dream it, Joybird can make it a reality. They even have a beautiful section of outdoor sofas, lounge chairs, and tables. Plus, free personal design consultants can help you nail down your design. Joybird offers a range of kid and pet-friendly upholstery options. Oh, now you tell me. So that your creations can stand the test of time. Best of all, thanks to their 365-day home trial. If you don't love your Joybird, you can return it for a full refund. See how Joybird can help you design your dream space. Find your joy today at joybird.com/majority. You can create the furniture that brings you joy. That's joybird.com/majority. Receive an exclusive offer for 25% off your first order by using the code majority. joybird.com/majority. Check it out, folks. And don't I know it? School is coming back. But breakouts don't have to. With America's #1 acne brand, Proactiv has helped fight acne for almost 25 years. Now, I have not been in the acne business for some time, but my daughter is. And now is the time where she's focusing on, getting the skin clear. Going to high school, want to represent. Proactiv has introduced their next generation acne treatment system called Proactiv Md. Proactiv Md contains adalpoline, which is a dermatologist-recommended topical retinoid used in the treatment of mild to moderate acne. It's the first prescription-strength retinoid that is FDA approved for use in treating acne without a prescription. And it works by affecting the growth of cells and decreasing acne inflammation. Kelly writes me, she's been using Proactiv on and off since high school. And she says the formula's improved over the years, but the ideas remain the same. It's a program of skincare that gives you short and long-term results. It's the best acne-fighting product that doesn't require a prescription, and it's been that way for a long time. Kelly apparently has sensitive skin, and she says that Proactiv's program has made my skin smoother and clearer without causing redness or peeling. And as she says, it's the perfect time of the year to start Proactiv for many people because school's starting up soon. Like I say, same with Mila. It only takes a few weeks to achieve noticeable differences in your skin. Confidence makes all the difference. Going back to school with noticeably clearer skin leaves one less thing to worry about. Proactiv is so reliable. It fights acne and improves the brightness and overall appearance of my skin. She writes, it's the best regimen I've ever used. Well, right now we have a back-to-school offer from Proactiv that you cannot get anywhere else. With your Proactiv MD order, you'll also receive Proactiv's on-the-go bag, which features their T-Zone oil absorber, body acne wipes, and green tea moisturizer for free. That's close to $100 worth of products. Plus, get free shipping with a 60-day money-back guarantee. So just go to proactiv.com/majority. That's Proactiv, proactiv.com/majority to order and make the first day back to school the best day ever. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Emily Guendelsberger on her book, On the Clock, What Low-Wage Work Did to Me and How It Drives America Insane. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. I found my notes. All is good. And on the phone, it is a pleasure to welcome to the program the journalist and author of On the Clock, What Low Wage Work Did to Me and How It Drives America Insane. Emily Guendelsberger, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's just start with how you got into writing the book and what you did, because this is I want to say it's an ethnography, but it's a little bit more than that. But tell us how you started to write the book and what you did actually to report on low wage work.
Sure. So nickel and dimed has always been, it's always sort of had a very foundational effect on my writing. I read it when I was a kid, and it really had a big effect on me, particularly the way Barbara Ehrenreich was able to sort of take all of these like things that it's sort of difficult for people or difficult or embarrassing for workers to complain about individually. Like every, grain of sand is hard to show it to someone and be like, this is awful. But, when you are buried in sand, it gets really heavy and hard. So that's one of the things that I really loved about that book was the way that, it showed how people got nickel and dimed by just this system that we live in and how it's different than something it's harder to complain about, and that it's harder because of that, it's harder to take action on it. So that has always had like a really big effect on my writing. In particular, I like doing a lot of first person experiential stuff. One of the things that allowed me to actually write the book was I was working at Philadelphia City Paper back in 2015, RIP. But so that year I published this piece on Uber, for which I was trying to sort of fact check the claim that they were throwing around at the time that their average driver made $90,000 a year, which did not seem correct to me. So the data was really hard to get because so much of it is individual, because all of these drivers are technically, their own little companies or whatever. So they're supposed to be keeping track of all of their costs, including, paying extra taxes because you're technically a small business, and the depreciation on your car, the amount of money you're spending on gas, just all of these little things that like human brains aren't particularly great at dealing with. We just are not particularly well evolved to like look at huge numbers or tiny numbers, especially not to look at how they build up over time. So anyway, I did that, and I signed up for Uber just so I could get some like data that I could really, get behind and trust. So I did that, worked for Uber for a couple months on and off, and eventually turned up that I, on average, made between $9 and $10 an hour, which like you cannot make $90,000 a year doing that, even if you work every single hour of every single day of a year. So yeah, and that like got a lot of attention, and I got some interest from publishers. It had not really even occurred to me that writing a book was a thing that I could do. I honestly kind of thought that was for rich New York people, despite being the sort of writer who consistently turns everything in about like twice the word count that she was given. So books are actually kind of an ideal place for me. But so then I was interested in doing the same sort of thing. I got really fascinated when I was doing Uber with the way that the driver side platform has these really like sneaky and subtle methods of controlling the drivers while sort of maintaining this facade of like, oh, they're just, they're all freelancers. They're just like, plumbers. They're, individuals in a market, and, which is, again, super ridiculous because the app absolutely pressures you to take rides that aren't in your interest, and it doesn't give you enough information about
right.
every ride, to actually make a decision about whether a ride is in your best interest or not. And again, like all of those gig economy companies are pretty much structured along those lines of like, oh, we're just a platform for everybody for all these, small business people to use. And if you haven't actually used the driver's side app, I could understand why you would sort of take their word for it, because, drivers, it's very hard for drivers to complain. And also, whenever you talk to your Uber drivers or Lyft drivers or anybody in the gig economy, they probably like what they're doing, because if they don't, they would have left, because it's kind of a sample bias on that one.
Right.
So I ended up going, I was fascinated by that, and I got really interested in doing the book about the various ways that technology is used in other workplaces, like the subtle ways that it controls people, that people who, for example, like have, power in this country, by definition are not likely to have had a service job in the past, 15 years or so, which is sort of around the period where this sort of Techno Terrorism is what I call it, has gotten like really, really, really extreme, and has made work just really miserable in ways that I don't think it's possible to really understand unless you have actually experienced it. So I tried to
Let me
do this.
When you say techno terrorism, and I'm glad, because that really, if there's one word to say what the difference between the jobs, the nickel and diming of the nickel and dimed era and today, it's technology, right? It is the granular nature in which that nickeling and diming happens now. It's like down to like the 0.5 cents as opposed to 5 cents. It's like 0.5 cents, 0.1 cents. But Frederick Taylor, when you say Techno Taylor, just tell people who Taylor was.
Taylor was sort of basically the first management consultant, sort of. At least certainly the first one who really had a really big effect on the American economy. He was from Philly, like me, and he was a pretty interesting and very, very strange person. One of the interesting things that I found in my research for this book of sort of the history of management is like all these guys were total freaks. Like they were all just huge weirdos that sort of like, and the way work is now has been sort of shaped around their ideas. But again, they're all total weirdos. Like Taylor, for example. All right. So what Taylor was is he sort of started out in steel mills, and he started timing each individual motion in every task that a worker was doing in the steel mill, no matter how small it was. And he was able to do that because of technology, because right about that time, like it was the 1890s, I believe, was when he first started doing this. And that was because there were they had rather stopwatches had just come out that were both accurate and pretty affordable. Before that, it wasn't really a thing that you even could do, like time every worker's movement by the second. So he started timing, like he would get the best workers on the payroll, and he would pay them double to work as fast as they possibly can for like a few hours, so that he could time them, figure out what the best, he called it the one best way. And he would basically, from the calculation, from the numbers that he put down about like how fast workers could technically go if they were the best and they were going as fast as they possibly can. And he used those to sort of extrapolate what he thought the average worker should be doing every day. And it was usually like 2 or 3 times what they were doing at the time. So when I say techno-Taylorism, like Taylor's, like, he calls it scientific management. And so that idea, like, that if you leave workers to do anything on their own, if you trust them, if you give them any agency, they're just going to screw around and, like, go slow and, you know, like, just misbehave in general, like they're children or something. And it sort of, like, overlooks the fact that, at least certainly now, a lot of people really, it's this, like, very American thing to take a lot of sort of pride in your work, even when there's, like, almost no pride to be found in it these days, because it's all been sort of squeezed dry by Taylorism. Like, in particular, like, he got rid of a lot of the skill involved in jobs. Like, he would make equipment that, so instead of, like, being able to having to hire someone who knows how to use a drill or, like, smelt or, you know, be able to work the equations for how to create steel, he got slide rulers and equipment that was specially made so that, like, it was very, very easy to use, so you could hire low wage or, like, rather unskilled workers to do it. And that sort of broke the power that skilled workers had over factory operations at that time.
And people should know that Taylor ended up being sort of like, you know, Henry Ford's guy, essentially.
Yeah.
And all right, but so we have this concept of techno terrorism where that is viewing human workers as potential machines on some level, essentially, like literally cogs, and trying to find out what is the most efficient position that you could put this cog in to get the most productivity out of it, without contemplating its humanity, and just sort of making certain assumptions about them. And the techno version, of course, is aided by computers and technology, which, you know, there's so many different phenomena that we have seen over the past 10 or 15 years that has dramatically changed, that is changed by technology to the point where it has gone from one thing and it's moved so far down the spectrum that it's actually become another. I mean, just like gerrymandering, for instance, just comes to mind, where everybody gerrymandered, but in 2010 they were able to gerrymander because of technological advances and cross-referencing data files. They were able to do it in such a way that made it almost a fundamentally different exercise than had been done in the past. But all right, so with that said, what the three jobs that you took, one was at an Amazon warehouse in Kentucky, one was at a call center in Hickory, North Carolina, and one was at a Mickey D's in downtown San Francisco. Why those three?
Well, Amazon was obviously my first choice because they are kind of the obvious one. Right. So when I started in 2015, I don't feel like the tide of public opinion had really started to turn in the same way it is now. It's been fascinating to watch how people have sort of started objecting to or sort of started treating them the same as Walmart.
Yep.
When it comes to their workforces. Like, there was this really interesting memo by Jeff Bezos that's in this sort of history of Amazon called The Everything Store. And it's called Amazon.love is this memo. And he sent it to his, senior people. And it's about basically why some companies are loved and others are kind of despised, like Walmart and versus, Apple or something. And he sort of concluded that the perception of the company as, kind of a small, scrappy, innovative business is what is really key to basically having cover to treat workers however you want without getting constantly, harassed by the press in the same way Walmart is, or just like not having that reputation as like this sort of like crappy employer. And it's been, again, really fascinating to watch things turn against them these past couple years because, yeah, they are the big guy now. They are by far the bigger than Walmart these days, and they're going to take over. So yeah, Amazon was, and also Amazon has, just from what I talked to people, like I talked to a lot of workers before I did any of these jobs. And the people at Amazon, like, especially when you start looking up places where Amazon workers go to talk about their jobs, they talked about it in a way that was just really different than the way people talked about other jobs that they did not like. Like it was really interesting because they are generally, like, by the actual workers themselves, are generally regarded as comparatively safe for warehouse work. Like, the conditions are generally held up as pretty good, and the benefits and pay were also regarded as pretty good, even back when, when I was doing my time in SDF 8, which is the name of my fulfillment center. Like, that was back when everybody was making like $10.50 an hour, who was there for peak. And that was still regarded as comparatively pretty good.
Right.
So they are kind of not, but still, people talked about that place as if they hated it so much more than they hated other warehouses. And it was because they're treated like robots. Like, if you look at any of the protests that happened on Prime Day, or any of the protests that have happened in Europe that have been sort of on a larger scale, like, the sort of unofficial slogan is, "We are humans, not robots." Like, that is what they want, is to be allowed to be human workers rather than sort of being so tightly held to these timings and trackings that, anything is regarded as any deviation from sort of being a perfect robot is regarded as kind of laziness and slacking and time theft.
Well, let's talk about your experience there, and then we'll get to the other places. I mean, but it does. So basically, when we talk about Amazon, on paper, by the standards in which we have looked at businesses in the past, it seems like it would be a pretty decent place to work, right? Not a lot of, but we've heard now of, like, attempted suicides, that some of these places actually need to have, like, I think an ambulance on call or something for this, and it has to do with the level of control that is exerted. I mean, according to what you've reported and written, what tell us how that plays out. I mean, it really just seems to be like, put aside the fact that someone's getting paid to work there, and put aside, it's almost like an experiment on how you could sort of make human beings disassociate from themselves.
Actually, somebody I talked to in the book actually said that, or rather, I think he said that Amazon, in his theory, was a giant social experiment on how much you could, like, make people do for a single fucking dollar, I believe were his words. Wait, can I swear? I'm sorry.
Yes, you can.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so at Amazon, so I'll just describe sort of how my job went. I was a picker. So in new fulfillment center, that's like a stationary job, but in, frankly, most of them that were not built in the last few years, it is a walking job. So you basically push this cart around this incredibly huge modular storage system. They call it the mod. And you have a big bin on your cart, and you have a scanner. Just an RFID scanner. It looks like something you'd find at the grocery. So you carry this scan gun around with you, and there's an LCD screen on the back, and it basically says every task you have to do, which is just, going to find that item, is subdivided into like 4 or 5 different steps, and each step is timed. And it's not just timed. There's actually a little bar at the bottom of the scanner that just constantly counts down the seconds that you have remaining to finish that part of the task. And it just never stops. Like there is no pause button. It is real again, like it's kind of embarrassing to say this honestly, because I was raised with a very like just, put up, like work hard, don't complain, etc. And I have gotten a lot of people who have responded to the book with like, ugh, millennial whining. Ugh. But this is one of those things where it is very difficult to describe how stressful that is, especially because the whole point of that countdown is that if you can keep ahead of it, then that means you're making rate, which means you're picking as many items an hour as Amazon like predicts that you should be able to do.
And so it's just to be clear, I'm just on the process. So it's 4 steps. So it's in other words, like get the list of the product that you need, right? Hair dryer and
it just pops right up on your screen.
And then make it to aisle number 7 by this amount of time. And then
they give you like basically coordinates, like these like 5-dimensional coordinates you have to go find the item with.
And so what are the 4 different stages though of that? Like assess what you need, find the bin that you need, climb the ladder. Like what are the 4 things that you're under like the clock for?
So it's just like basically different steps, like and they all end with a scan of some sort of barcode. So you scan to start a new tote. And then once you've scanned that, your description of the item and the like 5-dimensional coordinates where to find it pop up on your screen, and the countdown starts. So you navigate to wherever the drawer is. And again, the mod is just crazy looking. It is honestly very, very fascinating and cool looking. There's just these shelves, these cardboard shelves, and you just look in any direction and you can't really see the end of them. It's crazy looking. So you navigate around and you find the correct drawer. You scan the drawer and then you pull it open. You look inside and there's usually just my SDF8, the one I worked at, was almost all clothing. So everything, you'll open the drawer and inside there'll be this like weird mix of like 15 random articles of clothing, because this is actually a very smart way of doing it, because it's really easy to pick a pair of black socks out of like a bunch of hats and baby clothes and stuff, rather than like finding a drawer with 15 black socks in them and having to find the right size.
Right.
So so you find the drawer, you scan the drawer, and then a new countdown starts, and you got to find the correct item and scan the correct barcode on it. And then you scan that, you throw it in the bin, another countdown starts, and then you scan your tote, and then you go on to the next one.
I would imagine it depends, like, right? Like the machine knows like, oh, okay, you're a quarter a mile or 500 yards away from where the socks are, but you should get there in 24 seconds. Like what's the average interval that we're talking about here?
Sort of depended on the path that you take around the warehouse. Like it's called you call it a pick path, and it's sort of it's set by algorithms that both, try to make it the most convenient and close to each other path as possible. Like I cannot even imagine how much went into making the stuff that makes Amazon run. Like programming that is right. It's insane. But anyway, so it directs you around the warehouse, and it also kind of keeps you.
But how many seconds?
Very close to other people.
It's like 3 minutes.
How many seconds? It really depends. Like I think the max I ever had was 2 minutes, but that was on a weird day where we were all going back and forth.
So you just get a series.
It was usually more like 15 or 30 or something.
So if you get so basically what happens is for every task you do over the course of an hour, you are looking at like you're getting, I guess it seems like you're getting, let's say 30 to 40 articles, and each one of them goes.
No, it was much more than that. Rate was usually like 90 or 100 an hour.
So 90 to 100 an hour, and each one has 4 steps that is timed with seconds, and there's no break, right? You just flow from one to another.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds like how anybody could hear that and not think that would drive you crazy. Like you know that show Lost?
Yeah,
they had
you are not the first person to bring that up. Yeah,
they pressed that button where it's coming down to zero, and for a long time, that's the way I would describe this job when it was driving me crazy. Because like every day at noon, I got to press that button, and the show's going, and we got to be ready. The idea that you would have 4 of those like deadlines in the context of like a minute or 2 or less is insane. It seems to me.
Yeah, like it is incredibly stressful, like it is, especially because for a lot of people, their jobs do depend on being able to maintain rate. And it's also just like they're very good at sort of designing things to be stressful. Like they're purposely meant to make you stressed because that's how you're, the best worker is when you are, very motivated to make rate. But yeah, so that's making rate.
Wow.
And
okay, so let's talk about the call center. What tell us about well, first off, why a call center? Why that one in North Carolina? And then let's talk about what you experienced there.
So call centers are one of those places where everything is really, really, really tracked and monitored, obviously. But I thought it was very interesting how you were supposed to sort of repress all of your humanity, not just in the sense like, oh, I have to walk around an Amazon warehouse for, between 6:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. and they expect you to walk 15 miles a day and not talk to anybody and keep up with these countdowns and not even like listen to music. We weren't allowed to have anything distracting in there with us. We weren't allowed to have anything that Amazon sold. So that will drive you nuts. But the repression, like the sort of repression of humanity that's involved with something, with trying to like put objective metrics on something that's as sort of confusing and complicated as human conversation, I found really fascinating. So I picked a place called Convergys because it was the biggest third-party like outsourcing company. It's like really big. It's the biggest one that has jobs in the U.S. So I picked my Amazon location just because somebody's aunt offered me a room and I was broke. But Hickory, like I didn't really have that many, like I didn't have a contact that like would offer me a room near any of the like a couple hundred Convergys places, Convergys being the call center, sorry. And so I just picked Hickory sort of, I don't know, why not? It had a really interesting history as sort of the center of the American furniture industry. Like it's the furniture cluster is what it's called, and it's in Western North Carolina. And that is an area that's been particularly just decimated by globalization and NAFTA in particular. So a lot of communities that are in the same situation in that like there used to be a lot of manufacturing jobs that no longer exist. Like call centers are really one of the things that they try to get in to replace those jobs. So that those are pretty common in places like Hickory that have a lot of like, dead manufacturing.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So, just give us a sense of what you experienced there. And we should be clear, like, you're not working here for months and months.
I did about a month at each one, a little longer at Convergys and McDonald's than at Amazon. Amazon was but like 2nd of December to Christmas Eve.
Okay.
Which I feel the need to do it because Amazon has been coming after me with like accusations that I didn't work there long enough to understand how bad it was, which doesn't really make that much sense to me.
Right. Well, I want to just, I just note that. And when we talk about, after we talk about the different jobs, I want to just talk about the implications of being there like why it's different just being there for that period of time as opposed to like,
definitely.
But all right, so tell us about the call center.
So the call center was another reason that I picked call centers was because the stress involved with that, like particularly Convergys, but a lot of third-party outsourcing call centers, like for-profit ones that aren't associated with actually, helping a specific company's customers specifically solve their problems. Like third-party call centers, you usually have a lot of other things that you're supposed to be doing rather than just help the customers. Like you're supposed to be trying to sell them stuff, and you're supposed to be trying to keep these crazy metrics down because the company gets paid by how many calls you take in a day. So it's really, really closely timed, and it's really, really mentally stressful, like both in the sense that you're constantly multitasking across about like 8 different things. My workplace in particular was really difficult because the computer systems were so like poorly integrated. So you would like the sequence that you had to get through just when somebody beeps into your headset. And again, you do not really have a choice about when someone beeps into your headset any more than you did when, you were walking around Amazon, like that new job coming into your scanner. Like it just comes in and you're on, and there's no pause button. So yeah, like the mental stress people talked about specifically with Convergys online, like a lot of people mentioned like depression, anxiety, and in particular like suicidal ideation from the sort of abuse that they had to put up with at these jobs. Like in fact, like the perfect workplace that is usually used for studies involving job stress, like mental job stress, is actually call centers, because it is the perfect example of a high, low control, high pressure job. Like in mine in particular, you were not allowed to hang up on customers for any reason, no matter what they said to you. And that is not great. Because it's not just that you get yelled at like and cussed out a few times a day. It's that after that happens enough times to you, every single time a new customer beeps into your headset, regardless of whether they are going to scream at you or not, you kind of have this fight or flight reaction. Like, crap, it's another one. This is another one that could be a screamer. Like it makes you kind of paranoid, I guess. But yeah, so what I did was answer calls for AT&T, which is actually my own cell phone provider. So I would answer calls of people who were calling in with problems, usually with their bill. And during that, I would have to try to also sell them DirecTV or some sort of upgrade on their account. And you would have to try to fix their problem and sell them something at the same time. And it gets super exhausting.
Wow. And what were the hours like on something like that? Like what were the other forms of control? You've got, I mean, they keep sending you calls like, what if you got to go to the bathroom? What if you're like, you know what? I need to go buy a pack of M&Ms to stay awake or whatever it is.
Well, we actually got yelled at a lot for what's called toggling. And that's because they don't, give you a pause button for, if you need to use the bathroom, if you need to buy M&Ms, if you need to like go weep in the bathroom because someone just like called you horrible names and it gets to you. But so everything is also really closely tracked, which includes the time that you spend not logged into the phones. They only get paid by AT&T apparently for the number of like the exact minutes that the customers or that the reps spend actually taking calls. So any downtime, like when you're in the bathroom or whatever, is and like was explicitly referred to as like time theft, which is another super charming term. Like that was actually, like, the first time I'd heard of it was in Nickel and Dimed, because Walmart had sort of pioneered the idea of trying to rebrand any downtime as like stealing from the company somehow.
As opposed to the sort of built-in sort of assumption that one might have, like, I've got people working for me. I can expect that, 2% of the time that they're there is going to be spent in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Because they're human beings.
Exactly. Or honestly, just like saying hi to a coworker or chilling or something, or taking a couple minutes to like relax after a really stressful call. Like, these are all extremely human things that are very natural, but they are definitely looked at as like moral failings now that we've gotten so creepily good at measuring them. How
did your fellow workers and how did you like react to the idea of being accused of time theft? Like, were people like, oh, F that guy, or F that, that supervisor, I don't care. I'll go to the bathroom when I want to. Or did people actually feel guilty? Like, what is the reaction that people have?
Well, I think it depended on the person, but it wasn't like there definitely wasn't like, oh, F that guy sort of thing, because you had a report every single day sent to your manager of all the time, the exact minutes that you spent logged into the phone versus logged out of the phone. So they would know if you spent time in the bathroom, and you would hear about it, like, for real. But one of the things that I find the most irritating, I think, about the general mindset, I think, of sort of neoliberalism, this idea that like workers are naturally like lazy and terrible, and like they're just out to like, steal your time and will screw around. Again, like this sort of Taylorism idea is that like the people that I met at these jobs, like they were such good workers. They were so much better at, like putting up with this shit than I was, which again, if I had not been able to like get into white collar jobs in my mid-20s, I would also like, I think, be a more, I guess, like, I would be less outraged, because if I was outraged all the time, it would drive you insane. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Like, to the extent that on one hand you have an advantage because you're like, I'm only here for a month. Like, I'm just dropping in, I'm parachuting in. I'm gaining a book out of this experience. As much as I'm getting driven crazy, I'm going to turn it into a story. At the same time, I wonder too if you weren't more sensitive to how crappy it was, because you'd actually been in a situation where it's like, oh, you need to go to the bathroom? You don't need to tell me. In fact, I don't want to know. Just go. That type of situation. I mean, did you wrestle with that idea? Like that sort of dichotomy of like how much your awareness of how bad it was, like that there were, I mean, I imagine for a lot of these people, they've come from, they go work at the Amazon factory after they've worked at a call center, or they're working at the Amazon factory after they've worked at a fast food restaurant. And they're like, this is just all I've known. I didn't realize that like you could go and work at a place where you don't have to ask, like not only do you have to not ask for permission to go to the bathroom, but you're not chastised for it.
And you're not timed by the second on everything. Like, you are trusted to get, like when I was a reporter at a newspaper, I was trusted to get my work done. So as long as I was turning my stuff in on time, like, yeah, whatever. I could go walk around the block to clear my head. I could go get coffee. I could chat with my coworkers. Like, I was given a lot of trust, and just the the sort of like encoded system that people work in these, under these computer business systems is one of zero trust. Like everything is tracked, everything is timed, everything is almost automatically punished. Like, for example, there's point systems at a lot of these places, like Amazon and Convergys in particular, where if you're late coming back from lunch or coming back from break or late in the morning by like 1 minute, like you get a point for that. It's penalized and it goes towards, and once you get a certain amount of points, you get fired. And it's just, there's no agency even for like middle management to say like, oh, well, this person, just had a kid or something. So yeah, they're probably going to be late for a couple weeks. They're probably going to, or a couple months or whatever. Or this person is just, late because they are not a good worker or because they don't care or whatever. Right now, it's just the assumption built into all of these computer systems is they are late because they're bad people and should be fired.
So you just literally
the thing that I found the
number.
most yeah, you are a number. And the thing I found most disturbing about it was like that most of my younger coworkers at these jobs had never experienced a job that wasn't like that. It was just completely just the way the world was. It kind of sucked, but they didn't really have that much aspiration to anything else because all of these computer systems are so, widespread and common now.
They just
it's very
never
difficult to
experience
escape
anything
them.
different. I mean, that's the people used to say like all it would have taken to get the wall to come down in the Soviet Union is to drop American toilet paper in the Eastern Europe, and people find out like, oh my God, it doesn't have to be sandpaper. Things would have changed. All right, well, just briefly, because I want to sort of just get more of like a 20,000 foot view here, but just briefly. Tell us about your experience at McDonald's. Are there people, let me ask you this, let's just start with this. Are there, when you're sitting there at the register at McDonald's, is there someone next to you who's like worked so hard that they actually make more than you? Or does everybody get paid the same at McDonald's if they have the same job?
I mean, I think there are raises, and I was working in San Francisco, so I was getting paid like distinctly more than your average person at McDonald's was. I was making $14 an hour, which still was not anywhere near enough to pay rent in San Francisco.
Right,
or
but I'm saying
Oakland
within
or
your
really
own
anywhere.
restaurant, not necessarily from locality to locality.
Oh, within my own restaurant?
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly did not get that much chance to talk to my coworkers. Like there definitely were like, this was one of the few jobs where you can really understand why the manager is the manager, because in my situation, at least, the managers were all just like the fastest and like hardest core workers on the shift. So I assume they made a little more than I did, but in general, like there's no money in being like lower management in fast
But I'm saying, let's
food.
say you're not management. Like, is there a differential between Billy, who's working the fry-a-later, and Mary, who's working the fry-a-later?
Not as far as I know.
Right. Okay.
Other than how long they've been there.
Okay.
Which is generally not that long.
Well, so what's your experience there? Like, how was the Mickey D's different or the same, I guess, as the other two?
Well, again, everything it was really closely timed. This one definitely had the added pressure of like a physical line that's there all the time. And in particular, like that one, I felt the effects of understaffing the most. Because, understaffing, like you were talking about with gerrymandering, they've gotten so good at perfectly understaffing so that everybody is always in the weeds, but the customers don't, burn the place down because the line is so long.
Explain in the weeds, because you use that throughout the book, and it's an important. It gives an important sense of like of what you're trying to do with the book in some way.
Oh yeah, like I don't know what was your initial definition of in the weeds?
Well, when I say in the weeds, that means like I'm going deep into the details of this policy discussion or whatever it is, description of whatever I'm doing.
Right. So yeah, there's two, and that is one, and that tends to be the one that people who came from, who are more into like academic and white collar stuff have. My definition of it, the first one that I got was from like working with waitresses, and like in the weeds means like you're just fucked. Like you have so many customers, you have way too much work, you're falling further and further behind, and it's like almost impossible to dig yourself back out. So it's just like this exhausting several hours, like where you're just working as fast as you possibly can and still not being able to keep up. So what I found super interesting about that phrase is that when I got into like journalism, almost everybody seemed to have a different, that second one, your definition of it, and did not understand my definition of it. And I use that as sort of this central, metaphor for how the way that the same thing means completely different things to these two groups of people. It's very much the same with like other words like job, or like a good job, a bad job, like a hard job, hard work. Like all of these things have completely different meanings to people on the lower end of the job market and people on the higher end of the job market. Like to the sense where I don't think they understand each other at all. Like the people who I worked with in like Convergys that I had, more of a chance to become friends with, like when I would tell them about like my old, newspaper jobs and stuff like that, where I, my breaks were not timed, the second, and I could go out and, pick up lunch without having to like freak out over being 2 minutes late. That they had no comprehension of what that would be like. Like that was not something that they expected. And it's very much the same for people on the other side. I don't think that they really realize how bad things have gotten. They're still sort of stuck on possibly their own memories of service work from like the 70s or 80s, or just their general picture of it from, I don't know, movies, or I don't know, like economics or something. But it means completely different things.
It's interesting because as I was, prepping for this, it occurred to me that, we just had one of the things about the ACA was that it basically made a definition of what constitutes actual health insurance, right? Like you can call something health insurance, but even though on paper it appears to be health insurance, it's really not what we're going to consider health insurance, because health insurance is just a word that we've made up, and it should mean something across the board, and it should be meaningful, the meaning of it, that the health insurance should be a meaningful thing. And it occurs to me that we have this sort of a similar problem with jobs, right? People just assume like that. Just talk about that a little bit, because we're all at our job right now. But it is fundamentally different, it seems to me, than someone who is working at this type of job saying, I'm at my job.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, if I could force members of Congress to do this, I would force them to go work for a month, like in their during recess. Like they should have to go work one of these crappy jobs for a month. Like they just should. They would understand it so much better. And I think that policy would, I don't know. What do you think about this? I have been really on the fence over whether those types of people that really do have this idea of like, oh, people just aren't working hard enough, like that's why they're not succeeding, whether they don't know. Do you think they don't know? I'm still so
think there's a
about
certain
that.
portion that they don't know, but I also think that they're the ones who are instituting those policies that are so dehumanizing that they just don't necessarily think that there is a concept, I think, that's out there. Is if we're paying you, we get all of you. Like it's not, is it like we don't just get your we get your what we define as your labor. We don't get just your labor. That's not a narrow output. We get all of it. We own you for this period of time, and therefore what we do,
and not even just that period of time. Like one of the really difficult things about particularly retail and fast food is the way like scheduling works in that, like I was talking about earlier, they've gotten so good at understaffing by calculating using the data of when the store was busy, like over the last year, over the last month, over the last week. And the faster, like the more recent the data is, usually the more accurate the prediction of what staffing is going to be needed is. So that's sort of why so many people in fast food and retail don't get their schedules until like the day before it starts, which makes it completely impossible to plan anything in your life. Like you can't, like figure out a doctor's appointment. Like you can request that time off, but there is no guarantee that you'll actually get it. And I think it also really steals people's, honestly, their families in a weird way. And it's not just because like, oh, you never get to see your kids or something. It's impossible, not impossible, but it's incredibly difficult to be able to maintain like a relationship, like a functional relationship with your partner and your family. If like, for example, I met tons of people who, because they were not able to afford childcare on their wages, they would work opposing shifts. Like one parent would take night shift, one person would take day shift, and they would barely ever see each other. And that's not a life. Like that's not a relationship. That's not a marriage. That's like expecting people to live like that. And that's another thing that I do not think people know. There's so many people, like there's so many opinions out there about like, the decline of the family. And I don't really disagree with that, but like, it's not because of like Miley Cyrus or whatever. It's because like it's impossible to maintain a relationship where you never get to see the other person. You're both always exhausted, and like everything is an irritant, sort of like everything that comes up is like just another stress to add on top of it.
And I would add too that the idea of going to see your kids baseball game or their class project or taking a trip with them one day, like there's zero flexibility for that. That's just simply not possible. Do you have a sense? Well, all right, let me ask you this. I mean, we have by all accounts rising rates of stress and anxiety. Just read an ad for an app, a meditation app, Calm, that cited the World Health Organization, said stress is the the number one. Like, do you think, to what extent is this, what this does in terms of stress and anxiety?
So basically all of the three jobs that I chose, like sort of as examples of not just jobs that exist right now, but jobs that are very sort of successful in the market, I guess, and ones that are likely to sort of spread, like these methods are likely to spread in the same way that like Walmart's methods of treating their workers sort of spread throughout the 90s. So I picked them because they're probably going to spread like even further than they have now. And one of the things about constantly stressful jobs, regardless of what ways that they're chronically stressful, is that you kind of can't get used to chronic stress. Like there's a lot of talk about like hard work, but like hard work, difficult work, that is really different from chronically stressful work. It's a different thing. And chronic stress makes you sick. Like if you are chronically stressed, like it just demolishes your body. Like if you're setting your fight or flight reaction off like all day, every day, which a lot of these jobs are sort of designed to do so that you work faster, it will just like completely burn out your organs, like particularly your heart, but like also your immune system. You tend to be more prone to obesity and drug abuse and basically anything that sort of helps you. All of the things that we regard as sort of like ills that make you feel better. Mine in particular was McDonald's and like just food in general. but a lot of people and also cigarettes was one of mine. Cigarettes is a big one for a lot of people. Drugs, just things that make you feel better that aren't necessarily good for you. And it also has a lot of chronic stress has a lot of behavioral effects that I find really interesting in the context of what America's doing right now. And not just America, but Britain and France, all of these first world countries are starting to sort of exhibit the same sorts of symptoms, I think, in that chronic stress makes you irritable. It makes you paranoid. It's sort of picture a Mad Max world. That for most of human, history, biological history, evolutionary history, that was the only way that you would be getting your fight or flight pinged dozens and dozens and dozens of times a day, is if an actual apocalyptic event had happened, a volcano went off and ruined everything, and you were always going to have to fight for food every single day, every single meal. In that sense, in that sort of environment, it would kind of make sense to be much more ready to fight somebody, irritable, your sex drive would dry up because it doesn't make any sense to to reproduce in that environment. It would make sense not to sort of just not leave the house if you had enough food, which to me is kind of depression. It makes sense to be constantly alert, anxiety. And it also makes sense to kind of mistrust people that aren't from your immediate tribe or your family, people that aren't like you. When humans live in times of when there's enough resources to go around, which is most of human history, because we were fine with eating bugs back in the day, and there's plenty of bugs. We are kind of a naturally cooperative species. That's how we kind of beat out all the other species. Frankly, we have these big old brains, and they allow us to work together to accomplish things that we cannot accomplish alone. But when and that's for most of the time, but when things get really bad, then you sort of go out on your own and you protect only the people who are closest to you, and everyone else can go fuck themselves. And that's sort of what I think we're in today because of the way that we work and the way that we sort of treat our workers as if they should have to, constantly be pushed into doing the work that they honestly kind of already want to do. They just, would like to do it at a normal pace.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So lastly, let me ask you this. Do we have a sense of how many people, if there was a way for you to define this type of work, work that is done that has constant temporal benchmarks that exist throughout the day without relief at any point or whatever it is, right? Do we have a sense of how many people are in these jobs? I mean, I'm not talking FAA, air traffic controllers probably have a similar type of stress, but it's a little bit different. And they also, they're conscious of we need to give people a break. We need to, that's built into the system because they know that there's stressful. This we don't, because they just get rid of the people. And if they blow it once, they get rid of them, and it's not like a plane goes down. But do we have a sense of how many people are on the clock, as you call it, I guess, of these type of jobs?
Well, that took me kind of a long time to figure out exactly what number to use for that. So what I ended up with after kind of a lot of research was there was this very interesting paper from out of Oxford in, I think it was 2013, that was looking at the potential for automation in various jobs in the U.S., and in particular, they were looking at the degree to which jobs are routinized and sort of de-skilled to the point where you didn't really need to be a human to do them anymore. like stuff like cashiers. You don't like you used to be able to have to like actually make change and like do math in your head. And now like I go into a Wawa and like buy something and the person hands me the dollars and the change is automatically dispensed into like a little cup that I pick up. Like that's just another de-skilling part. And so this study found that like I think it was 47% of American jobs were so routinized and de-skilled that they were like very much in danger of being, fully automated within the next, I think it was 25 years.
Wow.
So yeah, that's the number I find the most persuasive.
It's stunning. The book is On the Clock, What Low-Wage Work Did to Me and How It Drives America Insane. Emily Guendelsberger will put a link to your book on majority.fm. Thanks so much for your time today. Really interesting.
Thanks.
All right, folks. Wowza.
I remember reading Nickel and Dimed, and that sounds like a good update to it.
Yes. The technology, like on some level, right? Like this is doing a similar thing. Not quite, but close.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, obviously not nearly as intense, and and you can put it down. I mean, you could literally walk away from it, but vehicles of control for productivity, broadly speaking. But this is super, super intense. The idea of that Amazon worker having to constantly hit those benchmarks seems relentless. Absolutely relentless. And I mean, I think to a certain extent, like, this is, at one point, you have a National Labor Relations Board that says this is not a job. It's not a job. Like, it's not a job. There are concepts in the law as to like, what you're allowed to sign a contract to go and do. And it's just not a job. And so, I mean, look, we already have the idea that we have worker safety things, we have standards of worker safety, physical safety in a job site. You can take a job for $100 an hour, but there are minimum standards as to how safe it can be, or has to be for it to work. And it's very much like, the idea of a minimum wage. I mean, the bottom line is like, we as a society that has progressed has the right to say that if you're going to operate a business within the context of our society, then there are certain standards we must require. We have requirements as to protecting consumers. You cannot put in lead into candy, even if it makes the candy super cheap.
In a certain sense.
Even if people are like, lead candy?
Innovation.
I mean, the lead you can barely taste, and it's like, it costs a penny. I'll take it. We just don't allow that. It's not in society's best interest to do so. It's not in society's best interest to allow work that could kill you. And it should also be recognized that it's not in society's best interest to have work that drives you insane or mildly insane. Even if you want to do it, sorry, we're just not going to allow this because it creates a dynamic, a protection dynamic. Look, we make these decisions as a society all the time. We make them in terms of vaccinations. Certain vaccinations will not be effective unless we require everyone to use them. And we see plenty of examples of this. You want to drive on the roads, you got to be on the right side of the road.
Well, I think this is just one more example of the kamikaze death drive embedded within capitalism. And because, like I've said before, if there's nobody to work for you, if everybody's dead of an opiate overdose or they stress injuries or whatever, they can't work for you. And there's no capitalism because there's no society. So you can deal with it by making regulations. You can deal with it when workers rise up and form a union and help each other out. You can deal with it with, my favorite thing, communism, but we got to deal with it somehow.
Right. I mean, it's just simply not sustainable. And, that's basically the bottom line. It's just not sustainable to do this to people on a regular basis. And that means it's going to cost you X percentage more to have your toothbrush sent to you from Amazon or whatever it is. And that's just the way that society's going to work. That it's just, there has been a decision made in society that it's all going to be about cheap products. And there is a presumption that we have all participated in this decision by seeking out the cheaper of two products when we're going to purchase something, right? That we're making our decisions with our dollars. But the fact of the matter is that as a society, we have not given informed consent to this decision. We have not been it is very easy to see that toothbrush A costs 25 cents less than toothbrush B, but all of the forces that make that price differential are kept from us. All of the implications of that, all of the externalities of that are hidden from us. And so we have not made that decision as a society with any type of informed consent. And I suspect that if we really understood it, that we wouldn't make that decision.
Well, the bosses certainly would. I mean, that's what they're incentivized to do by capitalism. It's not just personal greed. It's not just them being bad people, although I'm sure that they are. It is, you are incentivized to maximize profits however you can, and that involves treating your workers like robots.
Yeah, and the irony is, and I again, this may be one of those interviews that I keep referring to, is that sometimes that screws you. Like you get so blind to the idea of cutting labor costs and weakening labor that you end up, shooting yourself in the foot. And that is the U.S. car company story. And I'm going to try not to keep giving more stuff away from the interview so that people actually tune into it during our break. All right. Speaking of break, wow, we're gone late today, but we're going to go late. Hey, folks, like I said earlier, Proactiv is America's #1 acne brand, and it has helped fight acne for like 25 years.
I used to use it a little bit too.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, Kelly apparently used it big time. And now they have the next generation of Proactiv acne treatment stuff. It's called Proactiv Md. It's dermatologist recommended topical retinoid used in the treatment of mild to moderate acne. And order now and you will receive Proactiv's On the Go bag, which features their T-Zone oil absorber, their body acne wipes, and their green tea moisturizer for free. That's close to $100 in value. Plus, you get free shipping with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Just go to proactiv.com/majority. That's proactiv.com/majority. Particularly if you know somebody who's going back to school, who's having some acne issues. Nice thing to get them. Particularly now is a good time. Clear that stuff up before you get back to school. Gives you a lot more confidence going back. Kids can be rather difficult and self-conscious.
They get out there, they have a good time.
Just a reminder, this program relies on your support. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show, and then we give you extra content every day, commercial-free, and justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Don't forget to check out the AM Quickie. It's in your Majority Report feed. It won't be there indefinitely, so now's the time to check it out. Tonight is Tuesday night.
Indeed.
Is it Tuesday already?
It's Tuesday already.
Gosh.
I feel you. Professor Richard Wolff returns. He's in studio. We're talking about the modern economic history of the People's Republic of China. What is the economic system of China? What is state capitalism? What is communism and with Chinese characteristics, as they've called it? We're also talking about alienation, primitive accumulation, a mini illicit history of Pakistan, Afghanistan, alienation specifically as it relates potentially to ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and white supremacist terrorism. At 6:10-ish, there's going to be a pre-stream on the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel with Murtaza Hussain. We're going to be talking about specifically what's happening in Kashmir. Patreon.com/TMBS to get the whole thing.
Jamie.
Sorry. Get your Chicago tickets. They're going fast, and that's August 24th. So we'll see you there in Chicago at Chuck Mertz soon.
This week on the Antifada, I was away at the DSA convention, so the boys recorded an episode without me. I have only a very short and vague list.
I tried to time it for the when the boys did it without me.
Indeed.
Sorry.
I have a short and vague list of what it's about that Andy just sent me. I'm not even 100% sure I understand all of these things, but it includes the MK Ultra Left, Juggalos, Manson, Jake Flores, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I get all that. Matt?
Yeah, coming up for patrons this week is A Hanging, an essay by a young man named Eric Arthur Blair when he was 28. This was before he was George Orwell, and that's just going to be for patrons, so look forward to that, patrons.
There you go, patrons. Quick break, fun half right now.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck em. Almost says what? Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
You see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em.
fuck them. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here. I am a total pussy.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the fun half. We are here. Couple of clips. You know, someone said to me, regular listener of the program, texted me and said, did you ever notice that whenever there is a mass shooting, one that has like permeated the media, threshold, because we have mass shootings, you know, technically probably every day in this country, sometimes more than one. But it usually takes like 8 or 9 people to be killed before you start to hear about it. Like 4, you don't hear. 3, you don't hear. 5, 6, 7, depending on where it is, you hear about it. And he said, did you ever notice that there's always a phone call that you get that is like that one that you got, where it's just like the talking points are very similar, like none of this is going to work. Why are you doing it? Which is odd. It does strike me as odd. Like that call yesterday was odd, right? I mean, it's odd. And I do know for a fact that back in the day, different organizations would pay people to call talk radio shows. I'm not saying that's the case in this instance, but I do know that that phenomena exists. So if you're one of those callers and you're getting paid to call into the program, good on you. You're very, very fortunate because you're getting to listen to one of the better programs and getting paid for it. That's pretty good.
Sounds like a win-win.
It is a total win-win for everybody involved. So
that would be an interesting commissary conversation.
But let's go through.
Callers.
But let me the reason why I preface it that way is because I just want to say, like, you're not going to have to do that because we're going to let your conservative Uber lords call into the show today with their arguments about why gun control shouldn't work or more effective things. Like, I want you to think of a proposal as outlandish as the idea of, let's say, closing the private sale loophole or, you know, universal background checks, which I will argue necessary, but definitely insufficient. Should get far more aggressive. But think of the most outlandish proposal you could imagine. What's going to be so expensive and so impossible? And then Sean Hannity will say, hold my beer.
I don't think it's because I thought of it. But look, let's stop school shootings. We'll start there. Let's stop mall shootings. We'll start there. I'd like to see the perimeter of every school in America surrounded, secured by retired police, which you are, retired Secret Service, which you are, military. And I want guys to donate 15 hours.
But is he just trying to get Bongino a job?
Exactly. It's Dan Bongino. Well, he's asking him to donate 15 hours. That's why Bongino gets thrown off there. He's like, wait a second. Am I going to get paid? I'm not going to get paid for all of it. So the idea is it's an all-volunteer force of military, Secret Service, and police veterans who go out with their service pistols.
Tier 1 operators.
And will form this all-volunteer army. Now, apparently, would you get the managers, I guess, would also be volunteers? Like, I just wonder how many billions of dollars it would cost to fully militarize and fortressize every school and every mall in the country.
Great.
And then presumably you'd also want to do that with every sporting event and any busy intersection, right? I mean,
don't forget the movie theaters.
The movie theaters, of course, roller rinks, ice skating rinks. I guess that's it. I mean, it would just be
great great Rambo vehicle, I could see.
Yeah.
Right? Rambo gets pulled out of retirement again to guard the perimeter of an elementary.
Right, exactly.
And Sean Hannity somehow knows him, and he's just like, I know that you just wanted to retire into your farm.
But we need you.
We need you.
To...
There's absolutely nothing that we could do to stop school shootings.
We need you to guard PS 84 down on Anderson Street.
It's literally a force of nature. There's absolutely nothing we could do
that movie
to
would
ameliorate these things.
The movie would have to have a big arsenal scene like in Tremors where you look at all the guns and stuff that he uses to protect the kids.
Or you could also have the gun companies subsidize it because you'd sell them all the guns. Or would you just let them bring whatever gun you have, you bring down there? So if you have a service pistol, great. If you don't, you just have a shotgun, bring that down. Here's, let Hannity explain. Now Dan Bongino is going to, or whatever his name is going to add how he's going to do it like a triple negative here, but he's like basically saying like, I agree, but he doesn't quite say it that way.
To see the perimeter of every school in America surrounded, secured by retired police, which you are, retired Secret Service, which you are, military, and I want guys to donate 15 hours. I think we could cover every school, every hour, every day, add a metal detector, and I think we're going to have safer schools. Have one armed guard on every floor of every school, all over every mall, the perimeter and inside every hall of every mall. Now, that gives us an instant response opportunity.
Pause it. Now, just in terms of instant response opportunity, remind you, instant response. Now, he doesn't actually mean like half a second response, right? Again, I will reiterate, the shooter in Dayton, Ohio, was dead within 30 seconds of shooting his first shot. Within those 30 seconds, he had the ability to kill 9 people and injure 20 some odd.
Of every mall. Now, that gives us an instant response opportunity that we normally wouldn't have. Would that save lives in your humble, your expert opinion?
Well, I find it interesting, Sean, that when it comes to protecting the people that matter, the President of the United States, obviously, regardless of party, the leader of the free world, did you notice when I was in the Secret Service, when we took President Obama back to Chicago, a violent city, Sean, nobody said, hey, guys, disarm. Don't worry. It's Chicago. They have very strict gun laws here. It's not a joke. I say that because that's the proposal they want to propose for your kids in schools and out in public places.
There is no proposal to not have armed guards at schools because they already don't have armed guards there. So no one is like floating this idea. What if we pull back all the armed guards on every floor or the Secret Service who surround? I mean, honestly, if these guys are using that as an example, then let's take them at their face. How many Secret Service protect the president at any given time from any party?
A couple of dozen, I think.
A couple of dozen?
I think it's a couple of dozen.
So what we're looking at is a couple of dozen.
That's right.
Per child.
Perfect model.
Per student. Here we go.
A couple of dozen George Zimmermans per child.
They want to propose for your kids in schools and out in public places.
We protect our politicians with armed guards. Hollywood stars can afford armed security.
Right. My point is exactly that when it comes to protecting people that matter, elites, political leaders, what does the Secret Service and others do? Obviously, they have trained men and women with firearms out there to protect them. They don't say, oh, don't worry, Donald Trump is going to Washington, D.C. today. They have good gun control laws. Everybody in this Secret Service, take your weapons out and leave them here. You'd be openly mocked. Yet when that same suggestion is made for your kids, people go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense.
I can't imagine why Dan Bongino is not working in some other communications business right now.
So you don't have semi-autos for your kids? No, it doesn't make sense.
That is just the comment that demands to be repeated verbatim in a stupid voice.
Well, I'm sorry, but listen, I don't want Dan Bongino's inability to articulate an idea to get in the way of our assessment of Sean Hannity's idea, which is completely batcrap
volunteer hours for unemployed police officers to arm guard the perimeters of public schools
and malls.
And malls, you mean that really, really sharp? Which, by the way,
but not just the perimeter, on every floor.
I love how all of these guys, like, their like spitball solutions make a big government socialist like me,
right.
Dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what the Secret Service?
I believe
budget
it a
is?
little bit. It's a little thing called freedom, Sean.
Right. Guess what the Secret Service budget is?
What is the Secret Service?
Well,
budget?
what do you think it might need to be if we're going to make this feasible to cover 35 million school children?
Well, we have. I would say the Secret Service budget is what? $500 million?
It's $2.23 billion.
What?
Wow.
So,
but think about it. What about if it was all done as volunteer
I tried to do the math
you guys
here.
don't believe in the spirit of America.
He's trying to do the math.
So 35 million. I don't know what this number is. 16. 10.
We can't. The calculator doesn't even. I think it's like 7.805 billion to the 16th power.
I didn't know numbers went up that high.
What if we just do it? Can you? What if we do it in gift cards? Is there a way to figure that out in gift cards? Because we're not gonna. They're gonna volunteer for 15 hours. We just give them like a bonus on a gift card or something.
I don't even know if that has a name. 1 to the 16th.
That's a much more rational idea than perhaps banning certain classes of weapons. And then I would also. I'm happy to subscribe to the idea of a licensing regime where only people who go through various thresholds are allowed to own these weapons and can own as many as they want.
So you value the president's life more than your children.
That's basically...
Wow, what an incredible beta cock.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Even your own children you will sacrifice
people say I
to
have,
the altar of being a pussy.
People say I have Donald Trump derangement syndrome, but yet I value his life more than...
Donald Trump, who's supposedly so terrible, you value his life more than your kids.
15 zeros is a quadrillion.
Right.
And 18 is a quintillion.
A quintillion?
So we're somewhere between a quadrillion and a quintillion.
Let's just call it a $quadrillion.
How much is that in chicken salad sandwiches?
Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get a volume discount. So let's call it a quadrillion. Let's not have to worry about what it is with 16 drillion.
It'd be about 10 quadrillion.
All right. Well, if Sean Hannity does not have what sounds to most people like a rational idea for gun control, perhaps Ben Shapiro has a more rational idea. After all, he is the intellectual wunderkid of the right. Perhaps he has a more rational proposal to end gun violence.
That's nonsense. That's simply nonsense. Okay, those are guns in common use. The AR-15 is the most commonly owned rifle in the United States. A semi-automatic rifle is just a rifle that fires one bullet every time you pull the trigger. There are 100 million of those in circulation in the United States. There is no magic gun that is only used by mass shooters.
Well, pause it. Hold on for 1 second. Now, people are saying ban assault weapons, and it is true. A gun like an AR-15, one squeeze, one bullet. Of course, they keep loading in there, and so it's every time you, and you don't have to stop until they shoot you, and you've killed 9 people and 26 injured. His number that there are 100 million. Now, as you know, there are something like 380 million guns, I think, in the United States. Far fewer gun owners. They just own a lot of guns. But according to a 2015 report by the National Shooting Sports Foundation, American gun makers produced and imported 8.5 million rifles. These are what they call the modern sporting rifle, the AR-15, between 1990 and 2012. That's 8.5 million. And at about 1 to 2 million annually every year. It's been 7 years. That would be 14 million. Maybe a little bit less, 1 to 2. So we're talking about 20 million, maybe 25 million. So it's not 100 million, although 25 million is far too many anyways. But whatever. Ben is talking about Brett Kavanaugh's ruling that you can, or I should say the Supreme Court's ruling in Heller that you can ban guns that are not in common use. And now he's arguing that they're in common use, which is, of course, something that's fairly recent since we had the ban on semi-automatic weapons rescinded by the Bush administration. But nevertheless, this is what it's coming down to. They're in common use. So you can't ban them. But go.
There is no magic gun that is only used by mass shooters. We've seen handguns used. We've seen rifles used. I mean, hell, in different countries, you've seen knives used. So this is
Pause
not...
it. Yes, I just want to, I don't want to get too pedantic, but mass shooters do not use knives unless they have a special...
Knife gun?
Knife gun. Which shoots, it's like a Gatling gun, but it shoots knives.
Yeah.
Tiny
pew,
knives.
pew, 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 pew. Right. And that is, the only advantage to that from a potential victim's perspective is how hard it is to reload.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the butcher lobby really loves those.
The butcher lobby loves those.
Not to suggest that there aren't gun regulations that would be appropriate. I just suggested one, the gun violence restraining orders. But we're not going to settle on those. Instead, we're going to have a dumb political fight over something that's not going to get done because it's not actually going to prevent the problem.
This whole argument, and that very similar to the caller that we got the other day, which is like, let's do something that is extremely narrowly tailored and is focused actually on the people, not the guns. Let's focus on a subset of people that we think that we can. Now, we know 2/3 of gun deaths are suicide. And I would imagine very few of those are done with AR-15s. So we have multiple problems that we're dealing with here. It is a shame that we don't spend more time on the suicides because there is no doubt, if you look at the data, and there is enormous amounts of data and research into the circumstances in which people attempt to kill themselves, how many attempts after the first attempt most people commit, and the efficacy of trying to commit suicide with a gun, which is like 95%. Whereas everything else is much, much lower. And far more often than not, after the first attempt at suicide by some other means besides a gun, people don't attempt to commit suicide again. So we know that you could ban you could eliminate tens of thousands, maybe two tens of thousands. Let's just be general. Let's cut down 2/3 of those. Like the other 10,000 who commit suicide with a 95% efficacy rate will find some other means, even though the rates aren't even remotely close. But you're talking about 20,000 people a year whose lives you could save by either banning guns outright or creating some mechanism that makes the bar to getting a gun so much more difficult and so much not in the moment that you would keep those people from killing themselves and give them an opportunity to live their lives and not just end their life, but destroy and severely impact the lives of those around them. But Shapiro's just being a flack there because, I mean, how vociferously do you hear these people in the past? Like, this is not going to do anything. Well, what's the downside? What's the downside of universal background checks? Like, cutting into the profitability of these death machine makers?
What if you want to give your dad a gun, Sam?
Like, what's the downside here? You're not going to be able to kill as many. You're not going to have as many toddlers dead.
Well, look.
At the end of a year, if you do this, like, even if it saves one toddler's life, is it not worth it?
Well, I just have a little bit of a problem with that when you use the phrase common sense.
It makes you feel bad.
Well,
Oh,
that's
I
just, to
forgot
me,
about
it's
that. That
common
was
sense is not so common. So think about it.
All right, let's
It
just,
really alienates people.
before I get to the
Maybe they have
calls,
different thoughts about toddlers.
let me just
than you.
let's just play this clip here where talk about trying to clean up a mess. Here is Brian Kilmeade. Really, I mean, this guy's really going to the mat, right? Like,
Kimmel was right.
We got to, it's one of those moments, I think, where they're like, there's no way we can get around this. There's 2,000 Facebook ads. 2,000 Facebook ads that the Trump campaign placed, as reported by The Guardian today. And I had seen that number yesterday.
So they
use the word invasion to describe what's going on at the border. And again, we've said this way, way, way before this guy who killed 20 people used it in his screed to justify why he was doing it. We said time and time again, you use the word invasion. What are you telling people how to react? How do you repel an invasion? I mean, Trump in May said other places use guns to fire at it, but we're not supposed to. I mean, he said that to a crowd. And so when you're caught dead to rights, as it were, with all of your people, all of the people on your network using the term invasion, what do? Well, you just, maybe invasion doesn't mean what we think it does.
What the president has during his 2.5 years is a major problem at the border, which was not his doing. Unless you want to blame President Obama for the unaccompanied minors that streamed through here in 2014. When you have over 110,000 people coming a month, over 1 million last year, and then well over 1 million this year, if you use the term as an invasion, that's not anti-Hispanic. It's a fact. If the Russians were coming through Alaska, through Canada, the president would be using the same language. But it's the fact that's happening at the border. If you talk to people who are apolitical at the border, people want to look.
Now, wait a second. If the Russians were coming, now I don't know if he's saying like if Russian civilians were walking across the border through Canada or through Alaska, if that's what he's talking about, or if he's saying like they started a military attack, that you'd call it an invasion.
Kind of sounds like the latter.
Yeah, it sort of does. Like, I don't think he realizes, like, it's like an invasion. Well, if this happened with Barack Obama, why didn't we hear that term then? Why didn't we hear the term invasion then? Because you need to terrify people. You need to make them afraid of these people. You need to make them think that America is facing an existential crisis, and it is, of course, not. But when you gin up this type of fear, and it's not like there hasn't been a history of Minutemen at the border, lunatics who have done this shit, this is what you're going to get, and this guy's trying to justify it.
If the Russians were coming through Alaska, through Canada, the president would be using the same language. But it's the fact that's happening at the border. If you talk to people who are apolitical at the border, people want to look at the words infested, or and look at what the president's saying. And then they say, well, look at how could he use this rhetoric when it turns out Elijah Cummings is using the same exact rhetoric 10 years before the president was even hosting The Apprentice.
So I guess Elijah Cummings used the word infested one time.
Elijah Cummings does the OK sign all the time. All the time.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
But you ignored it.
It's unbelievable. God, I mean, I hope they pay Brian Kilmeade just, what is it, $1 quadrillion a year to actually having to try to justify that crap?
Yeah, the point about Trump saying the word infested, isn't that like anybody who uses the term infested is like clearly meaning it in a racist way? It's that Trump uses it, when he uses it, he's always talking about black people.
Yeah, he's always talking about black people.
I mean, I don't love it when anybody uses it, but it's clearly different when Elijah Cummings says it.
Well, I don't know what context Elijah Cummings said it.
He called Baltimore drug infested.
Yeah, so there were drugs in there. Like, drugs are a horrible thing, he's saying. We should do everything we can to eradicate them.
Trump actually tweeted that video out too, so that's where Kilmeade's getting his research from.
It's just absurd. But he's also having to change it from infested to invasion, which he started with. And like, I don't even know what he's saying. Like, even if it was the Russians coming, he would say it's an invasion. What is that supposed to mean? That like he likes the Russians, and if they're the Russian civilians coming?
He actually said Baltimore was getting infested by white people.
Oh, is that the? That's probably. That's probably.
Sorry. He said Whole Foods and everything else. They're bringing many, many problems.
Some are nice people.
Quote.
If the issue is that we cannot absorb these people, why do we not hear about the equal number of people who have overstayed their visas as an infestation? We have an infestation problem from those people who have overstayed their visas. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. Nobody knows that. Nobody believes that crap. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 209 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Sam? Okay. Hi, Sam. How are you?
I'm doing great. What's on your mind?
That's good. I was just calling because I know Michael's going on Destiny's show tomorrow, or Destiny's going on Michael's show. Is that correct?
I don't know.
I think
Okay.
I'll be stopping by
Michael, I'm sure Michael
Destiny's
knows.
thing tomorrow.
Whatever
it is
so
he
I'm just
does.
hoping Michael sends Matt's honor and also kind of brings up some really good points that people like Peter Coffin, like yesterday, didn't bring up. And yeah, that's
all right.
Just also wanted to know like where that would be aired.
Well, I think it will be on Destiny's channel, so just stay tuned. We'll figure it out.
Okay. Calling from a 314 area code.
You got to call up, and before you get to that stuff, you have to be like,
yeah,
I think that
something that might be relevant to this
I think
show.
that certain airline regulations might not be common sense.
It is. This is neoliberal John in St. Louis again calling you.
Hello, neoliberal John. I commend you for picking your own nickname, but go ahead.
Go eat some chicken salad, white boy.
So, yeah, I've been kind of yelling at your cast of characters there on Twitter a little bit, and I still am kind of a bit frustrated with, I feel like you guys use that term still, neoliberal, just as sort of like a catch-all for bad stuff.
John, to be honest with you, John, you're the only one who've used it right now.
I have to say this. I looked at my usage. One second. Because you implicated all of us. I recently looked at my usage of the term neoliberal on Twitter. I searched all of my usages of it, and most of it is making fun of people who overuse that. So.
And I don't know that I've ever used the term on Twitter. To the extent that I've used it on this program, it is to describe a political philosophy that believes that the market is the best and only solution for problems that we face in society. So if you're going to call about Jamie and Michael or Brendan using neoliberal.
Yeah, Brendan uses it all. I have had to say Brendan.
I'm not interested.
I'm like, bro, pro
not
tip. You
interested.
can't
But
just tweet.
would you have
But
something else?
I will say this is a very neoliberal call.
Yeah,
in the sense
sorry,
of inefficient time
like
waste.
the guest who was on earlier is also using it, but I think that's accurate what you just said. I just think that is
you didn't appreciate
there are a
the
lot of
use
people-
of the guest using the term neoliberal?
Get her back on the phone.
No, what I'm saying is that basically anytime there's like a terrible idea, right? So it'll be like for-profit prisons, or it'll be like some asinine thing that libertarians
That one
support.
counts.
Well, for-profit
Like,
prisons is a neoliberal idea.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that.
Wait. Hold on, John. You call in, you say it's neoliberal, John. There, you're using it in a flippant way, in the way that you're calling to criticize my use of it. You just use one example of how neoliberal is used in a misplaced way, and you used for-profit prisons, which I can't tell you if there is a better example of the use of neoliberalism. Of course, privatizing a government function is definitionally neoliberal.
Yeah, the word does
Wait,
mean
I want to
something.
just hear what John has to say to that, because this is stunning.
Right. So I guess that's where I have the disagreement. I would feel that a neoliberal is just a liberal who does think that there is a place for markets and for capitalism, but it doesn't mean that the markets are always the best solution.
Well,
So you have
there are two
someone
solutions.
I would
Hold on,
classify
John.
Keynes
There are
as being
two
someone who seems like
solutions
leader.
to prisons if you're going to have them. Okay, one is they're run by the public, the government, and one is they're run by the private market. And if you determine that prisons are best privatized, how can you tell me that is not a function of a neoliberal philosophy?
I would say there are other people who believe in free market. You see what I'm saying, right? There's other
actually,
ideologies that
everything
also
I am
advocate free
expressing,
markets
John,
besides just
everything
neoliberals.
I am expressing is a function of me not understanding what you're saying.
Okay. I apologize for not being more clear. What I'm trying to say is that I think there are some free market ideas that people attribute to neoliberals that I think are more rightly lumped in with like the conservative or the libertarian sort of philosophy. I feel like there's a lot, I feel like Keynes, who believed in free markets and thought that market setting prices in capitalism had its place, but also that the government should intervene and not let people starve and give them medicine. I feel like that could also be classified as neoliberalism.
What?
Neoliberalism was the negation of Keynesianism.
Neoliberalism is not Keynesianism, bro. You're lost.
That is also true economic history. But I want to say something more relevant, which is that if this is a bit, you are killing it. Please tell me this is a bit. This is a bit, right? You're messing with Sam. You're trying to give him an aneurysm.
You know what, dude?
Yeah, check your
honestly,
facts, buddy.
This is the worst. I mean, the way that you set up this call by introducing yourself as neoliberal John to argue that neoliberalism is used as a catch-all for things that are bad is so poetic, because this was, in your words, a neoliberal call.
Thank you.
Good day, sir.
Hi, this is Socialist Michael. I object to healthcare for all being called socialist.
I just want to read from the Wikipedia of neoliberalism. Neoliberal John, what is that? What his name was?
Yeah.
Neoliberal John.
Yeah, scholars now tended to associate it with theories of Mont Pelerin Society economists Frederick Hayek, Milton Friedman, and James Buchanan, along with politicians and policymakers such as Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, and Alan Greenspan. It doesn't look like Keynes is mentioned, so I'm not sure where neoliberal John's going.
They were trying to overturn
Mont
the Keynesian
Pelerin
order.
was a function of exactly what are we going to do about this Keynesian?
God, I wish we could dig up Keynes's body so we could have a McLuhan moment.
Sir, you have exactly.
Yeah.
It seems like someone's using neoliberal in a vague catch-all way, and it's not us.
Well, exactly. You don't call in and say it's neoliberal John, and I'm trying to argue that using neoliberal as the term bad is a mistake. You just proven your point.
The only thing you mentioned is private prisons?
That was, the one thing. That was a pedantry-driven nonsense argument call that Sam wanted to hang up on.
Yeah.
That tells you everything you need to know about your call there, buddy.
Nothing worse than a nerd that doesn't know anything.
And he still didn't. Yeah, word. And he still didn't take it. I gave him an out. He could have pretended it was a joke. We all would have patted him on the back.
All right, I'm going to play this next clip. This is obviously in reaction to what we've seen over the past couple of days. I'm playing this clip because it's aspirational for me. It's aspirational in the sense, the other one, Beto. It's aspirational in the sense that this is the moment where we're going to see, and I think to a certain extent, we've seen Beto O'Rourke's humanity, right? Like, I think he's clearly moved by this. This is the community he grew up in. He has a lot of attachment to it. And I think he's been clearly moved by it. And look, politicians, there's an element of politicians that I think is inescapable, that they have some distance and they can see how they're being perceived at any given time. I mean, I think to a certain extent, even doing what we do, I'm conscious that I'm on camera. I'm conscious that people are looking at me more often than not. There's a couple times I slip and, pick your nose or you do something like that. But for the most part, you're aware of it. And so I am sure
I'm breaking the third wall.
That he's also aware that this is a moment for him as a presidential candidate to show his leadership. I think it's not insincere what he's doing, but I think he's also aware of that moment.
Was it the Kaepernick thing, or remember that video of him in the church when he was running against Ted Cruz?
Yes,
so he is good at these things.
Yes. But the other question is at this point, like, to what extent does his humanity, where he genuinely cares about this, and his understanding of the political moment make him realize that he should drop out of this presidential race and declare for the Senate? Because he is in a position now, if he didn't do it before because he didn't think he could take on John Cornyn, there's every reason to believe, particularly when you have half a dozen Republican congresspeople who are dropping out and running for re-election, so their machines are a little bit dispersed. You're going to have a lot of energy, a lot of money is going to pour into that state to take congressional seats, which is going to help you in your run for the Senate. This can help you run for the Senate. It's going to be interesting to see what he does. But in the meantime, what he's saying, I think is heartfelt. It's important to be said. And he could, if he believes all this, he could do far more as the first Democrat who wins in the state of Texas a Senate seat in decades by winning that seat.
And he did say white supremacy is hate and should be treated as domestic terror.
Yeah. Important for you then to say that this is the same man who called white nationalists and Klansmen and neo-Nazis very fine people, who asked for more immigrants who look like those in Sweden and Norway, the whitest places on the planet, while describing immigrants from Haiti as full of AIDS or countries in Africa as shithole nations. This is the most racist president we've had since perhaps Andrew Johnson in another age and another century. And he is responsible for the hatred and the violence that we're seeing right now. You cannot leave that just to me. To say that it's got to be you and those who are helping this country understand what is happening in our name.
I mean, the thing I like about what Beto is doing too is he's making a critique of that goes beyond politics, right? I mean, he's making a critique, and this is a dynamic that I think has been very encouraging. We saw this during the debates. I just don't remember a time where Democratic candidates for presidency, for any position for that matter, are they're not making a structural critique of the press. I mean, I think Bernie has done that in the past, and we've had politicians who've talked about media concentration and whatnot, but they're making an operational critique in terms of the way that things are framed and the way that they are educating the American public. And it's helpful. I mean, remember the Republicans last year, the whole thing, and they did this, they've done this many cycles, where they will call out the debate moderators And it's like it was almost like the first one to do it during the Republican primary last time. It was like a race. But now you have them making this critique of the press, saying like, we're going to demand more of you and more fairness. And I think that's very, very important that the Democrats either begin as individuals but reflect, I think, a change in the Democratic Party that we can question the conventional
And I think
wisdom.
that specifically with this, the fact that at least among the candidates, the Democratic leadership isn't there yet at all, where they need to be. But the candidates are all saying on stage, like Sanders in his closing statement said the guy's a racist and so on. But the next pivot is to do exactly what you're saying. That is the next layer, to not just say like, yes, I'm going to come out and call him a racist and I'm not going to let him off the hook. But then I'm going to say, in some sense, how can you even be asking, like,
Right.
you're giving me a positive quote.
Right.
You're ignoring the entirety of the guy's career in politics.
Right.
And the answer is not, by the way, to talk about how we need to step up law enforcement. Bernie had a lot of good takes on this issue. That wasn't one of them. And it's a weird week when Beto's doing a little bit better than Bernie on something.
I don't know about Beto's policy prescriptions, but I'm giving him a pass from saying this shit belongs on the battlefield. So, yeah.
Battlefields don't belong anywhere.
Lastly, in terms of, Eddie Glaude we've had Eddie on the show many times. And over the years, really, I think. But he's, getting more airtime on MSNBC, which is great because he has a very strong, passionate voice about these issues of race. And I think like he just delivers a message very well that you just don't hear on television that often, frankly. And he's like one of the few pundits that you can watch and you just feel like he's just operating with a different set of rules that he has set for himself. Like, I don't care if you fire me. Like on some level, like, this level of passion, is, I think generally there's you never get discouraged to do this, but there's never sort of like any type of encouragement, even in the context of like where you're sitting around the desk, everything's so antiseptic. But here's Eddie Glaude on Nicole Wallace's program.
I mean, America's not unique in its sins as a country. We're not unique in our evils, to be honest with you. I think where we may be singular is our refusal to acknowledge them and the legends and myths we tell about our inherent, goodness to hide and cover and conceal so that we can maintain a kind of willful ignorance that protects our innocence. See, the thing is that when the Tea Party was happening, we were saying, pundits, oh, it's just about economic populism. It's not about race. When people knew, social scientists were already writing that what was driving the Tea Party were anxieties about demographic shifts, that the country was changing, that they were seeing these racially ambiguous babies on Cheerios commercials, that the country wasn't quite feeling like it was a white nation anymore. And people were screaming from the top of their lungs, yo, this is not just simply economic populism. This is the ugly underbelly of the country. See, the thing is this, and I'll say this and I'll take the hit on it. There are communities that have had to bear the brunt of America confronting, white Americans confronting the danger of their innocence. And it happens every generation. So somehow we have to kind of, oh my God, is this who we are? And just again, here's another generation of babies. Think about it, that 2-year-old had his bones broken by two parents trying to shield him from being killed. A woman who has been married to this man for as long as I've been on the planet almost, lost her husband. For what? And so what we know is that the country has been playing politics for a long time on this hatred. We know this. So it's easy for us to place it all on Donald Trump's shoulders. It's easy for us to place Pittsburgh on his shoulders. It's easy for me to place Charlottesville on his shoulders. It's easy for us to place El Paso on his shoulders. This is us. And if we're going to get past this, we can't blame it on him. He's a manifestation of the ugliness that's in us. I've had the privilege of growing up in a tradition that didn't believe in the myths and the legends because we had to bear the brunt of them. Either we're going to change, Nicole, or we're going to do this again and again, and babies are going to have to grow up without mothers and fathers, uncles and aunts, friends, while we're trying to convince white folk to finally leave behind a history that will maybe, or embrace a history that might set them free from being white. Finally.
I mean, you don't hear that kind of stuff on cable television very much.
Seriously.
Just incredibly impressive. And that's the case. The country has never come close to sort of acknowledging this reality and then sort of reconciling it and trying to even move on. I mean, there's really nothing else to say. It's just an incredibly impressive. People should send that around, incidentally.
People should send that around, put that far and wide, and tomorrow I'll have a Chris Matthews mashup of that.
Right, exactly. All right, folks, we only have time for.
It's so powerful. I'll give it a grace period.
We have only have time for one more call. Apologies. I know I got a lot of people holding. Calling from a 541 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, is this me?
Yes, it is.
My name is Ian. I'm calling from Oregon.
Ian from Oregon. What's on your mind, Ian?
Hey, so I just, this is directed to all you guys. I just really wanted to thank you guys for all of your coverage of unions. I'm actually currently trying to possibly start a union at my job. Currently working with the local chapter of the IWW, and I really, really want to thank you guys for that. It really inspires a lot of people.
Oh, we appreciate it, Ian. Well, good luck. Let us, keep us updated.
Thank you very much.
Keep us updated.
All right, I will. Yeah, long-time listener, long-time member, so just keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
Keep doing what you're doing.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, that was a good good call to end the day on.
Nothing objectionable there.
Nope. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth